welcome to FOBtv, the future of business. I'm your host, Kevin Benedict, and I want to thank each of you for joining us. I'm really excited today to be able to introduce our guest, Dr. Tomer Simon. He's the National Technology Officer at Microsoft Israel, and he's a fellow futurist. So, Tomer, thanks for joining us.
Hi, Kevin. Thank you for having me, and I'm very excited. Thank you.
And behind the scenes, you guys didn't see this, but this is like the fourth take because I've been backpacking in the mountains and haven't been thinking about work for about 4 days here. So I stumbled over my introduction so many times before we got this one right.
If you have the time to disconnect and the ability to enjoy nature, I think it's amazing. Yeah.
Thank you. So, Tomer, talk to us about what's going on with COVID-19 in Israel right now.
So I think it's like the famous article, "The Hammer and the Dance." We had our first wave. Now we're seeing an increase, but still we're in the opening phase. Where every week we open more and more things back to business. The train, more and more businesses. Even now, cinemas are starting to open and theaters are starting to open. So we're on a positive trajectory with a lot of, let's say, contact tracing and safeguards around just to monitor and make sure that we are on the correct, safe way to open back completely.
That sounds good. Well, Tomer, we here in Boise, Idaho, we got down to something like only 20 new cases a day, so very low. But then we opened everything up, and immediately we have 100 new cases a day for 5 straight days. So now they're having to lock things up again to try to stop it. So yeah, it's just a crazy virus that just won't go away.
So I agree, and just to reiterate, when I mention open, it's with social distancing, with masks.
Yeah.
We still have the people get fined if they are not wearing masks, both civilians and business owners. So it's still the restrictions and social distancing are being practiced, and this is one of the things that are enabling us to open safely and start moving back to some kind of a new normal.
Oh, that's terrific. So before we get any deeper into our discussion, Tomer, let's talk about your background. Why don't you share a little bit about yourself for the audience?
So the National Technology Officer in Microsoft Israel, it's quite a unique position also in Microsoft. Out of the almost 170,000, we have only 46 like this, so it's very unique. And I'm in Microsoft like 16 months, so also new. Working locally with decision makers, C-level, with executives, trying to see and develop business strategies, and bringing also my background as a futurist and these mechanisms in. And so it's amazing how to balance and integrate both the business aspects and the amazing technologies that we have today. I came from Amdocs. It's a telecommunication service provider. It's also one of the largest high-tech companies in Israel. I was there for the last 2.5 years, their futurist and academic relations, and before that, their CTO.
Yes. So talk to us about the role of being a futurist. Now, you say that's probably a unique role there in Microsoft. How do you use your professional background as a futurist in your job now?
So my title is not futurist, unfortunately, but I'm using all the background and I'm still practicing it to do my job, because the vast background, the knowledge, how to process the information, how to give an outlook of plausibilities to businesses, especially in these times, to create a reference and also to produce scenarios. Very good for the discussions. Many organizations are needing to reassess or reevaluate and even rebuild their strategies that they just started executing on January. And 3 months later, a lot of things are changing. So the futurist mindset and toolkit is very helpful in these discussions, and also to help these business leaders to drive, let's call it, a more flexible and fenced or safe strategy that includes other things that they may not have taken into considerations before COVID-19, for example.
Oh yeah, I work here at Tata Consultancy Services, and immediately when COVID hit, they turned to Frank Diana's Futurist team, which I'm a part of, and asked us to start analyzing and researching business impacts across the board. So I can see how it seems like the role of Futurist is having more and more, instead of being an academic exercise, they're bringing it into actually a strategic and tactical role. So that's really interesting.
I agree. Part of the things that a futurist can do is like wind tunneling the strategy of an organization. And by the way, it's from an organization to an entire country, the government. And you can use it on every scale as a tool to test, verify, and even build new strategies. Understand this second layer of external factors that may affect us that will come in a later stage.
Oh yeah, because a lot of the changes are not obvious when you just give it a casual glance. You need to go back and say, okay, if that scenario happens, where does that lead? And then
Exactly.
if that lead happens, what other scenarios might open up as a result of that? Another way of saying that is the unintended consequences of change, right? That you might not have anticipated. So I've been reading a lot about the impact of COVID on Microsoft. So I understand that a lot of technologies that Microsoft is offering today are exploding in popularity as a result of everyone kind of staying home. So talk to us about that success.
So I think it's part of the change that we had to move to digital. Everyone, we saw it, more than 130 countries close their borders, all kinds of borders, their airports, their ports, and also ground border crossings. And we had to go home and work from home for 3 months. And I guess that if you ask CEOs in June, January, if they can imagine the organization, all of their employees working from home indefinitely, uh, they probably said that you were crazy. But then COVID came, and we understand that digital is the only way to allow and enable businesses to respond, maintain their operations, and this is the footprint that the value that the tools that Microsoft brings to the customers and also individuals is the ability to do it seamlessly and continuously wherever they are. And I think this is also why you see the exponential use, a lot of value they get from the products, and of course it is tied with security and compliance. That I think it's part of the things that I regret that also us as private people during emergencies or during times of crisis, we reduce the significance or the priority that we put on information security and privacy. And I think these are the times that we must be really wary of it, because we saw so a significant, and let's call it a geometrical increase in cyber attacks around the world.
Man, that's painful. So just when everybody's struggling, then you get the security breaches and all the problems that are associated with cyber attacks. Wow. So thank you guys for doing that. Good luck on that, because that's exciting to read about the success of technology companies. So a lot of your responsibility, if I understand it right, Tomer, is talking to both government leaders and business leaders about digital transformation. Before we dig into that, tell us, what does digital transformation really mean to you?
So I'll begin with the transformation, not the digital. I think the digital is the enabler, but not the goal of the transformation. It's how you reimagine even the entire operations of organization. Even if you're a government or a private organization, even an educational institute, how you interact with the employees, with your customers, how you reimagine also it's not how technology, but how to do the bureaucracy, even internal bureaucracy and process better. But the idea is the breadth and depth of the organization, and to reimagine it, doing it differently, and then use the technologies to make it happen. And don't, at least from my point of view, don't start with the technology. Start with the value of the organization, reimagine it, and then choose the best technology to make it happen. part that I see are very important is it must be driven top down. I mean CEO level. And this is the engagement, digital transformation that if you are really intentional about it, you cannot delegate it. It's something that must be led by the CEO, top down, intentional, changing the organization, because the change management aspect, moving the cheese to so many people, you cannot do it bottom up. When I work and I see also organizations that or fail or succeed, the top down is one of the most crucial factors. The commitment of the CEO, the vision of the CEO, and his engagement throughout the process is pivotal.
You know, long ago I borrowed the term doctrine from military strategy. And it's one of those things that I've taught in workshops often, is that there has to be a digital transformation doctrine that comes from the leadership of the company. Why should every line of business engage in digital transformation? What is the overall doctrine that we're aiming for as an organization? And that should be that kind of guiding principle that allows every different department within the organization kind of move toward that light. So fascinating. Thank you for talking to us about that. So digital transformation, in some cases, that journey companies are on is being accelerated by COVID-19. In other cases, it's being inhibited or is acting as an obstacle out there. How do you see it, and what are you hearing?
So I can tell you that organizations that I saw and worked with, that they had a digital transformation strategy already in process. They were able to accelerate and really gain tremendous value in short time. And it was really reduced from 6 months to even 12 months into 1 month or 2 months that they've been able to complete amazing things to it. The second part is that organizations that understood that digital is the only way forward and started adopting the technology, the processes, changing the culture, changing how we interact, how we meet, how we sell, how we support our customers. So it's really a cultural change that companies should have done, and also companies that are still objecting or even understood only lately. Things are starting to reopen, and they are taking their foot off the gas because they say, okay, there's no need. And this is a thing that I think it's a mistake from their point of view. I think this is a business imperative in this age. There are a lot of metaphors, be the prey or be the predator. It's highly competitive on every sector, even public sector, highly competitive even between states, between countries. Everything is measured, KPI'd, and listed. So just again, I hope there was a nicely research that was published around 2013, showed that after the previous crisis of 2008, 2009,
Mm-hmm.
companies struggling with the financial crisis think that they are cutting is the innovation department. And I think the innovation is their only engine to drive new businesses, whether it's the adjacency theory or new growth engines. I think this is some kind of a reflex that they should avoid and invest. It's not nice to have, it's mandatory today to have this skill muscle inside the organization, and combine it with what methodology you use for innovation, but combine it into your digital transformation journey.
You know, I've seen that COVID-19 has really shone a spotlight on organizations that have really been successful with digital transformation. I notice even at small businesses here in Boise, Idaho, there's some restaurants that never reopened because they didn't have the infrastructure to support takeouts, even basic things like that, or curbside delivery or anything like that, or they struggled so they didn't reopen for weeks after others opened. I saw grocery stores in the first week be able to immediately implement home delivery, which they had never done before. And I was just going, yes, man, these guys were able to just push a button and pivot in an agile manner instantly and kind of take off. While there's other retail stores that never reopened, they didn't even come out with really a coherent strategy. So I've been able, even at the very smallest of businesses, see the ones that were kind of prepared and the ones that weren't. What are some of the biggest challenges you're still observing out there around digital transformation?
So I'll give more examples. Telemedicine there was almost an 800 increase in Israel. Before COVID-19, doctors refused to use it, even patients. We didn't refuse because we wanted the personal contact and interaction with the doctor. And then you see, everything works fine. I don't waste time. I'm not, the cost of the transaction reduced dramatically. I don't need to clear my calendar. I don't need to go to the car, drive, find parking, go to the HMO, wait in line. Hopefully, it will end the previous visit on time, and then I don't know what time, and then the entire route back. And now I'm just waiting at home, using whatever telemedicine technology I use, and I meet a doctor, and I continue. I can tell that in Israel, all the HMOs, around 30% of patients came physically to the clinics, but 70% received it digitally, and it's 100%. There was no reduction, and 800% increase. And also, it's very important that part of you mentioned one of the obstacles is the digital literacy of the employees, and also in the health domain, doctors and nurses and all the medical staff, their digital literacy is quite low globally. And I think now that they had to use whether robots, teams, or telemedicine, increased friction and understanding and expertise with digital technologies, and will enable the health institutions to promote much faster now their transformation looking forward. So I hope it answers both of your questions. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and Tomer, that's exactly the same experience that we're having here in Boise, Idaho. I know a lot of people in the medical field that had never been exposed to a lot of these telemedicine, and now that's very popular, especially in these times. One group of doctors, they are a surgery team. They would meet every morning before surgeries at something like 5:30 a.m. in the morning to have their group meetings, and they've been forced to do Zoom meetings ever since, or it could have been Microsoft Team meetings, and they said they would never go back. So now they're all shaving while they're doing their morning meetings from home.
So time management changed completely, I think, during COVID. We understand and understood that we can manage most of our interactions. We don't need to meet. We don't need to commute hours to each direction. We can manage teams. We can manage work. We can manage procedures remotely. And I can tell you another example is the chatbot that we released together with the CDC, but also in Israel, a chatbot that can do the self-examination of COVID, that you can interact with the chatbot, AI driven. It will tell you if you have corona or if you don't have corona. So this is also something that was important also to start exposing the general public to these technologies and these interactions, to reduce the fear, to reduce the frictions, and to better adopt it looking forward.
That's fascinating. I've had the opportunity to create a chat bot myself with all the algorithms behind it, and I could see how that would do it. You know, just based on answering 10 questions, is your likelihood of having it,
exactly,
based on the way you answered it, is it greater or is it less? And should you be talking to a human as a second step? So exactly. Fascinating. So I've been involved in many research projects where we talk to leaders about digital transformation, and based on a bunch of parameters, either categorize them as laggers or leaders or somewhere in the between.
Yeah.
And mindset was always one of the highest differences between a leader, the way they think about digital transformation, and laggers, which really don't give it much credit or much value in their mind. Tell us about your experience there. What does somebody that's going to be a leader in their organization and is really out front as a leader in digital transformation, what is their mindset like?
I think that part of the mindset is to understand that digital is not only limited to the IT. Today, I think the democratization of AI and a lot of technologies are so abstract and so simple to use, that and leaders should be much more familiar and understand what AI is, what digital is, and be the owners, because you see that the CIOs, the Chief Information Officers, are becoming more and more business oriented, because more closer to they're also part of the C-level, but CEOs, and we had a very nice newspaper, November 19, was that one of the blockers of digital transformation is that the CEOs do not understand technology. It's like the famous quote of Henry Ford, it's associated with them, but if I would ask the customers what do they want, they would just say faster horses. No one could imagine the car. And this is part of the things that we need here, the CEOs, that to be AI friendly or friends with AI IQ, that they'll take ownership and help reimagine, take an active role, and even lead this transformation. And it's a growth mindset, because they need to understand that to go back to being a student, to really be open to learning, to see the changes in the business world, that how technology is affecting business and all of these interactions. So it's really an open mindset, very, very humble, I think, also, because if you come with the know-it-all attitude, it's going to be very, very problematic to lead such transformative strategy on your organization.
You know, another difference between leaders and laggers that I noticed in this research project I was involved in, had the younger the leader, the more digitally smart they were. Their digital IQ, their AI IQ was much higher the younger they were. And that's unfortunate, because you have so much talent and wisdom in older leadership, but oftentimes they don't take the time to make sure that they are understanding the new generations of business. So that's kind of a lesson for all of us as we get more gray hairs, is that we need to continually be reinventing and re-educating ourselves too, so we don't fall behind ourselves.
I think that also during the COVID-19, during the closures, most of us, all through the generations and the ages, we had to use digital platforms. And I hope that these leaders took this opportunity and really learn, use it, and not tell their personal assistant to use it for them, and really take ownership and start the learning journey. And then they'll be better understanding and empathetic towards their employees and their customers on the changes. And this is the change management aspect of the digital transformation, that you really need to see the people's aspect, whether it's your employees or the customers in the journey.
Oh, that's a really interesting insight, Tomer. Thanks for sharing that. Where leaders are unsupported in their home offices, and they have to learn to do those things themselves. And that
Exactly.
will change your perspective.
Yeah.
They'll be able to see the breadth of the features available.
Exactly, and they can see that time, that how to use it much more effectively, how they communicate, and then they'll be able to start really reimagining their business. They need to do this deep dive.
Oh, absolutely. So, as a
Yeah.
wrap-up question here, Dr. Simon, talk to us about what technologies out there right now are you most passionate about? Which ones are really exciting?
So AI, of course, the tremendous potential and all the continuous development and breakthrough is really amazing. I'm following it. And the second one is quantum computing, that I'm doing now a deep dive into it, learning the math, the physics, everything. I'm really fresh, and this is something that is a huge potential for the next leap. And I think we had a few announcements during the last year. I think we're going to have more announcements in the coming year. And this is the quantum intuition is completely different. This quantum physics, the spooky action from a distance, like Einstein called it. And this is the thing that I think it's similar to AI. There are two similarities. AI is also a technology that we don't understand why it works, for example. And the second is quantum, that we really don't understand why. We cannot explain some of the quantum effects. And this is the things that we need, again, to take in ourselves as a challenge, and to really move ourselves from our comfort area and start being also quantum literacy. You don't need quantum physics. You don't need the math. There are simple notions that can already, you can find it easily online, but this is the next breakthrough that is going to change a lot of things, and most of us is for the good. Climate change, the nitrogen fixation, material science, a lot of things that we'll be able to do that cannot do today with classical computers.
Oh, wow. Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Simon. And one of these days, we're going to have to compare our libraries and see which books you have, which books I have. I would
Happily,
love
thank you.
to do that
Yeah.
sometime. I want to thank you so much. And I also want to congratulate and, number one, thank Microsoft for creating platforms that are so useful to so many of us during COVID-19. And congratulations for you guys to be forward thinking enough to have these platforms in place, so when the world needs them, you guys are ready to jump on that and deliver. So thank you very much. And
Thank you for having me.
time.
Thank you.